At 7 o'clock, I call the meeting to the order, ask for a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Motion is second, all those in favor. And Weeds Company, we got 4. Looking forward to hear what you have to share with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here. I'm just as by way of reminder, I'm Sid Weens, president of Weens and Company Construction. Clark Weedle, Clark is our business development guy, if you recall, used to be superintendent at Hayden Schools. And Sarah Sype with Landmark Architects. So Sarah will be doing the professionals part of the presentation tonight, and then I'll follow up. I would just ask you kind of follow along. Our book is laid out in the order that we're gonna present, and there's a lot in here. We're not going to read everything. We're gonna hit the highlights and the lowlights, how you look at it, but I just want to say thank you for the opportunity here. And so when were we here, Derek? Was it April 26th? Sarah, Clark, and myself came out, as well as Brent England from Engineering Consultants, Laura England, Brent is structural engineer, Laura England is an electrical engineer, also as engineering consultants, and Sean Conway with professional engineering consultants. So Sarah will be reviewing those reports. Derek took us through the building along. I forget your maintenance man's name. He was along up to
Wes. Yep.
So did a pretty thorough tour of the building, all buildings, and so what we're going to do tonight is share our observations and our thoughts. Sarah's and the consultants will be a little more specific and maybe a little more technical. My observations are going to be a little more opinion based. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
Architects, as I mentioned, I will be hitting hopefully not all low points, but kind of the idea of this is to do an observational review of your buildings, your facilities, and give you our unbiased opinion of where things stand with your facilities. So you have the booklet in front of you, but I'm going to hit by each building, kind of hit our high points, low points, if you will, of what we see as issues in your facilities. I'll start with the district office here in this building. The building is structurally sound. We really didn't see any structural issues at all. There's some masonry touch pointing that needs to be done, some masonry cleaning that could be done on this building, but really no issue structurally at all with this building. The roof probably needs to be re-roofed. There should be an accounting, and this is generally for the entire district. There should be an accounting done of when all re-roofs were done on your buildings. If you're not already doing that, there you go. So if you're not already doing that, an accounting of the years that re-roofs have been done, so you can start to develop a program for when those re-roofs will need to be taken care of in the future, and start to develop maybe a little bit of a phasing of that, so they don't all hit you at once as you're needing to re-roof your project or your buildings. Finishes in this building are adequate. We've noticed a few water damaged ceiling tile, things like that should be replaced. If you have found the cause of that ceiling damage and taking care of it. Taking care of those, obviously the cause first, and then taking care of those finishes that have been damaged by the water is always a good idea. There is no handicap accessible restroom in this facility, but easily one of the larger restrooms could be made to be handicap accessible with not a lot of work to make that done. There are no security cameras on the exterior of the building, and there's no door access control. Those are not huge issues for a district office per se. We get into that more with the actual school buildings themselves, but something to consider, since you are remote from the other two buildings. So just something we noticed and picked up on. There are no, now moving into my consultants' issues. There are no significant plumbing or mechanical issues. There's no outside air to the building, which should be there at least for the split systems. So that could be added for relatively insignificant cost. Unless it's already there in the attic, it may be there. They just didn't observe it at the time. So that could be added. The electrical panels, they're aging out of functionality. There are some old electrical panels in this building that are aging out of functionality. So getting those replaced would be a priority for this building. There's a panel in the restroom, which is a violation of code. So getting that taken out of the restroom and into a different location would be important. There are paper exit signs in the building that should be replaced with powered exit signs and emergency lighting. Just something as a matter of code that needs to be done. And that we've noticed that in a couple of locations throughout the facilities here. Other than that, this building is in pretty good shape. You know, like I said, the finishes are in good condition. They may date the building a little bit, but district office, so probably not critical that those finishes be updated anytime soon, especially not for student use, anything like that. Preschool building. The building is in decent shape as far as structure is concerned. The roof likely needs to be replaced. Again, accounting of the roofing that you've done in the district throughout the years is important. The windows and doors are not in great condition. And natural light in that building is pretty minimal, especially for an early learning center. So we would recommend if that building remains in use, that maybe with replacement of windows, we find a better way to get some more natural light into the space. Finishes are adequate, but they seem rather drab. There's a lot of grays and just not bright, fun colors that you would expect in an early learning center such as that. The building is not generally ADA compliant. The restroom could be made so. Either the restrooms could be made so. Obviously, they have to step up right now for the little kids to use it. So if you needed ADA capacity for any of your students, it could easily be made to be that. Obviously, right now they're just using that step up for the little kids use. So understood there. But the building itself is not ADA compliant because it's more than half an inch from coming up to the building up into the space. It's actually more than a half inch. So it's really not ADA compliant just to get into the building the way it is, which could be made, that could easily be changed if the way to access, just with some different paving with the sidewalk. Security is okay. There's not a secure entry into the building, which we like to see at all student use facilities. You just obviously have one door in and you're in the space. So that's never the better scenario for that. The playground is adequate. The equipment could probably be upgraded, but the playground space itself is adequate. The parking and drop off is really not great. Parking is there, of course, right at the front door, but there's really not a good drop off area because it's right through that alley where I'm sure there's traffic. A drop off area for that preschool is probably something that should be considered. Moving on to the consultants, HVAC should be replaced throughout that building if it continues to be used for that space. It's a heat-only furnace, and then of course the AC window units. So not an ideal scenario. Of course, no fresh air, no ventilation air, which is required by code. There are paper exit signs in that building as well, which should be replaced with powered emergency lighting exit sign combination. That's really all that was noticed electrically. The fire alarm system is there, smoke detection is there, which are required in an early learning center. The elementary school structurally is generally in very good condition, especially for that older portion of the building, the 1941 building. Really has good bones. Some masonry maintenance, repairs, things like that are needed, some tuck pointing, typical things that we see with the masonry building, but structurally it's in very good shape. There's a suggestion for window replacement. You've got window replacement on the art room, which is in fabulous shape. Just suggest to maybe do the same throughout the rest of the building to get those wood clad windows replaced with some aluminum windows. Finishes, you know, there's modular carpet in some areas and then broadloom in the rest. So if carpet remains the finish that is desirable in those spaces, replacement from that broadloom to a modular would be suggested if district funds allow. Most of those rooms are in really good shape. Some of them just seem really drab, especially with the lighting throughout the hallways in the 1987 edition. I know there's just that bright lighting along one side, and then it just seems really dark throughout this hallway. So not what you want for a nice, bright elementary classroom. There's some damaged ceiling tile again. Once the cause of that is remediated, getting the ceiling tile replaced would be important. ADA compliance, it's adequate. You have it at the west entrance. You obviously can get in the building, but the main entrance doesn't have an ADA compliant entrance. So that pushes you to the west entrance, which is not your main entry. So you've got a bit of a situation there as far as what the main entry is and where actual main entrance happens. So maybe some confusion there for visitors to the building. Of course, once you've been there, you know. ADA compliance at the restrooms. The 1987 and the 1941 multi-user restrooms are not technically ADA compliant by today's standard. They could be made so with some modifications. And the single-user restrooms across from the art room and the special ed room actually are not either by today's standards. So again, just some respacing of fixtures, things like that to make them actually ADA compliant. The platform wheelchair lift that gets down to the gym floor. That does allow compliance to the gym floor, but it's kind of a circuitous route to get there. It's a little bit, it's a little bit, I don't know how to put it, but not really how you want to present that to someone in a wheelchair. They have to get through the back alley or back through the hallway just to get to the gym floor. So it is technically ADA compliant with that platform lift, but not a great situation to get people down to that gym floor. Locker rooms downstairs, obviously not compliant, but not really used for locker rooms either. So not much of an issue there. The playground is good. Playground east of the building is good. It's got a lot of good play equipment. Obviously to the north, there's a great play area, wide open, plenty of play space, but you do have to cross some traffic to get to it. So again, some secure entry, security issues, and just safety issues for kids. There are security cameras at the outside of the building and within areas of the building inside, so that's great. There are doors, which keeps the building itself locked down. Times that you want it to be, that's great. The secure access at the entry, again, an issue. You don't have a secure entry once you're in that set of doors, you're in the building. There's not a secure check-in to the office, which is what we like to see for schools. We like to have that secure vestibule. Check into the office, and then you get a visitor badge or however you would prefer to do it, and then you're in the building. There is no storm shelter at grade for the building, so that's an issue that we see. We also see that for the preschool, of course. If we get into a storm situation, anyone in the preschool would have to come to the elementary, out in the elementary, then downstairs. It's not great for anyone to have to go downstairs. We prefer to see a storm shelter at grade. And of course, the lunch situation, going out in the weather and across the street for lunch. Again, purely unbiased, just things that we see, but that's not maybe a great situation. So some suggestions there would be, if an addition of any size were to be made, it could be made as a storm shelter, and a cafeteria would be a great candidate for that.
Sarah, you said no storm shelter at the elementary school. I was under the impression that the bathrooms on the new portion met that. Are you telling me based off of what you see on the plans for that, they're not technically storm shelter?
No.
Okay.
Into the consultants. So plumbing in the east original building is well beyond its life expectancy. The water heater is beyond its life expectancy. So getting those replaced would be a priority in that oldest 1941 building. HVAC is a replacement suggested throughout the elementary school. There's code required ventilation that's just not present, especially in the 1941 original building. So there are a couple of options listed, and you can read through those for how that can be accomplished. Rooftop units, so at a 1-for-1 classroom, so one rooftop unit per classroom. This is how we would do that on a rooftop unit. And there's also an option to put in right now there's a 2-pipe system with your boiler. There's an option to put in a 4-pipe, and that would take care of your heating and HVAC in the shoulder months. So you wouldn't just be in heating or just cooling. You would be able to have heating or cooling in those areas rather than just one or the other. Obviously, the 4-pipe is more expensive of those two options. Again, I mentioned the dark halls. I'm on to my electrical engineer's assessment now, but the dark halls, emergency lighting in the interior restrooms was requested by staff. It's not present now. And then additional exterior lighting. Specifically mentioned by the staff when we were walking through. Junior, senior high school, structurally, other than some minimal wall cracking, the boiler room and the wood and art shop building, not a lot. Structurally, things look pretty good there. There's some routine maintenance, masonry repair, those kinds of things that are typical of a building of some age, but nothing critical structurally that we saw. Some grading improvement needs to be made around the building. There's just not positive drainage in some areas. So we want to make sure we have positive drainage away from the building so that we aren't getting water collecting up around the foundation and contributing to any of the moisture problems that we have at the foundations. I would suggest window replacements as district funds allow. The finishes, again, the same thing about the carpet, broadloom carpet throughout in some areas. You do have modular carpet also. So if you have the opportunity to replace to modular, I would certainly recommend that. Ceramic tile, there's quite a bit of ceramic tile damage in the locker rooms. So replacing that would be suggested if those locker rooms remain in use. There may be the opportunity for you to do an addition that would bring the locker rooms up to grade, and maybe those don't need to remain in use, and you would maybe replace that. Again, damaged ceiling tile, cause of that damage and then replacing it. That's it. Interior glazing. So a lot of the classrooms have the interior glazing into the hallway, so windows from the classroom to the hallways. And they've been covered over or sort of infilled or covered in just whatever manner the teachers could come up with. And so I'm thinking that's probably because it's a distraction, kids walking the halls for those kids that are in those classrooms. So maybe a more permanent infill of that glazing would be suggested if that is truly a distraction and something that that should be done or at least thought about just to make those classrooms a little more private. The auditorium is a great space. You just don't see auditoriums of that size in many schools anymore. So other than updating the seating in that space and some of the finishes, curtains, things like that, I think the auditorium is wonderful. It's a great space. I think it should be celebrated. ADA compliance, access into the building and egress from the building is good. Didn't see any issues there at all. The restrooms, again, just not compliant. Could be modified to be made compliant. Parking is all good and compliant. There's plenty of parking at the building, which is great. The parking's a little remote from the main entry, but that's not a huge deal. Security cameras are present and access doors are good. You have secured lockdown, I'm sure, during the day when you need it. Site lighting is present. Again, here at this building, no secure entry. So it would be very easy, I think, to create a secure vestibule and then an entry into your office space, just by the way that the high school lays out. So I think that would be easily accomplished. So you get that secure vestibule, entry into the office, and then someone vetted and given a badge or however visitors are handled in the building, and then they have access to the spaces. Consultants' notes, replacement of piping as things would be changed out is suggested. Not necessarily a full piping replacement, but replacement as funds allowed is suggested. And definitely mixing valves at fixtures where hand washing or showers occur. The water heater was set to a really high temperature, so there was concern that perhaps really hot water going to some of those fixtures that should not be. It shouldn't be set for more than 140 degrees. So that was a strong found. There are a couple of options for how you can handle HVAC at the high school. There is not some of that ventilation air that's required by code, and the VRF is not handling the cold weather as well as it. VRF tends to have an issue with that, so you could put a DOAS unit on that would help regulate that air in the cold winter months. Then you could address things in the future with your VRF, and you have that DOAS in place to help you with that. Or you could go on the south side, sorry, that's on the north side where you have the science renovations. On the south side, you could put RTUs on, rooftop units, like we talked about at the grade school, as an option, or we could talk about that 4-pipe system again. So stay with the boiler, replace it, but use it as a 4-pipe system instead of a 2. Again, RTUs are the cheaper options. 4-pipe system would be the more expensive. Electrically, on all of the buildings, the electrical engineer was able to determine that peak demand day was well below the capacity of the building, so that's a good thing. We've got plenty of capacity at your buildings. There are aging distribution panels and circuit panels at the building, so always changing those out for the newer models that have plenty of parts and components that you're able to replace when they break, when they need replacing. And it will be an important thing for all the buildings. And then as part of that, determining the distribution system itself is recommended at the high school. There wasn't a good way to determine exactly how all that distribution happens in the building. So getting that determined as part of replacing those distribution panels would be important and recommended. Emergency lighting in the bathrooms and exterior lighting was requested here by district personnel as part of the walkthrough as well. The VOAG building, the industrial arts and the weight room. Structurally, there was some cracking at the mezzanine, the floor slab, and some cracking at the CMU. So there's a little bit of more, there's a little more concern structurally maybe at the VOAG building than any of the others. So on the interior, there's some VCT where that cracking is starting to shadow up through the floor. That I would suggest replacing that if you're able to take care of some of those cracking issues and replace that floor. There again are some damaged acoustical ceiling tiles, same issue with the water. You're able to figure out why that's happening and then replace the ACT, that'd be great. ADA compliance is not great in those bathrooms, and it would be quite an undertaking to fix that. It's not as easy as it might be in some of the other buildings. So maybe finding a space where you can create an ADA single user restroom would be a better solution at the VOAG building. The building itself is compliant. Its access is good. Ingress and egress for compliance is great. There are cameras present. Door access is by key fob or keypad, so that's great. The remote location from the main building, of course, is a security issue, and of course, access to a storm shelter is through weather to get to one. Mechanically, there's really nothing that mechanical suggested other than better ventilation. Of course, when you're in there in the shop, you would want better exhaust, and potentially tying that to a makeup air ventilation system in the winter months would be helpful. Since we're going to be needing the heat anyway, we can tie the exhaust to it. It would be great to have that kick on when you've got the doors closed anyway. Electrically, aging distribution circuit panels again, and then determining the distribution system itself, since we're not sure even where that building is fed from. And emergency lighting was requested. The athletic facilities, we looked at the concession building under the bleachers, and also looked at football field lighting. Building roof needs to be replaced. The concession window should really be replaced at a minimum if the building itself doesn't get replaced. The bleachers are in great shape. They are aluminum in great shape. You have ADA access to the bleachers. You have ADA seating at the bleachers, which is great. Press box is reported by staff to be in good condition. Crack may need to be considered for replacement, depending on the year the overlay was completed. That should be part of your consideration. There are cameras present. The building underneath the bleachers, at the very least, should be upgraded, if not replaced. Plumbing and HVAC's concerns were exhaust in the restrooms. There are no exhaust fans in the restrooms now, and they would be required to meet code. Electrically, there should be a new switch for the overhead football field lighting. The way that switch works now is something she had never seen before, so she said to bring that up to current safety standards would be an immediate fix. And then another immediate fix would be there's a conduit at grade that would have exposed wiring in it. But I imagine that may have already been done. It's discussed pretty heavily at our walkthrough. And then a consideration would be potentially new football field light fixtures. They're pretty aged. Again, as you look through, you'll see more comments and some suggestions as well for things that, as we look at storm shelters in particular, of course, the high school doesn't have one either. So any areas that you can potentially think that you might need that are of some size, we always try to think about how that might function as a storm shelter. How you can provide for the building's census in a storm shelter and have it also function day to day for the building and not just be new square footage that doesn't also get used every day. Storm shelters are a big concern, and the secure entries were the biggest concern. Structurally, your buildings look good. Things we see as we're walking in with a new set of eyes, not someone that's there every day. I know Sid and I have talked about a few things that we have seen as potential options, and we'll see that through. So, anyone has any questions for me before we start that? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Turn back towards the back. There's the tab that says construction manager opinions. So I'm approaching this more from a long-term vision. My approach is a little more subjective, not looking at technical stuff meets technical code so much. Really just to give you a broad overview of my impressions. The goal of this is to help you begin the process of setting priorities. I think we're going to give what we're giving you tonight is going to be a whole lot more than you're going to be prepared to take on at one time. So our effort here is not for the purpose of trying to jam down your throat. You got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. But to really give you a sense of, hey, there's a lot of things here that use our attention and we need to start somewhere. So we feel like for the most part, your existing facilities can, if their service lifetime to be extended 50 years at least, but it's going to take some work to do that, to do it well. So if you just, I'm just going to kind of go over what I typed up, and please interrupt me if you have questions, if you think I'm stupid, whatever. Talk to me. I'll try to respond as best I can. And so the architect and the other disciplines did the observational, and they've submitted their reports that are bound in this. You had requested budgeting information. That was part of your request. I excluded it from my proposal because this can go so many directions. And I think it would be fruitless, it'd be unhelpful to really pursue that at this point. I think once you've kind of absorbed this information, then we need to get back together and talk about what directions you want to head so that we can give you some good information budgeting. And we will do that. We'll provide that information, but I think we need to, you know, put a narrower choke in our shotgun before we do that. So I did, I mean, you will see in the mechanical report, he does have some numbers. Those are bare numbers. They don't include any other aspects. So if you're putting a rooftop unit on a roof, it's not including, it's just including the new HVAC system. It's not including, if we have to beef up the structure to hold it, it's not including new ceilings, it's not including electrical, that sort of thing. So those numbers are, you have to understand what he's giving you there. So I'm just going to go through section by section. We'll start on the first page here at the preschool. I don't want you to be offended by what I'm saying. I'm saying what I believe. It's not going to be necessarily very complimentary. I'm not here to stroke you and make you feel good. We try to look at it with unbiased eyes, like Sarah said, and so we're going to be saying, well, this is what we're seeing and what maybe you could aim for. So on the exterior, the daycare building or the preschool building is not very appealing. We've been involved in a number of daycare. There's usually some nice pop. Doesn't have to be crazy and amazing, but just something to be more appropriate to preschoolers. New playground, upgraded playground would be good. It might be good to have a little better drop-off parking situation that's handier and safer for quick in and out for parents to drop off. On the interior, there is no storm shelter at the daycare. There's really no separate area for food prep or serving or eating. The interior is dingy, it's dated. It's below standard from what we typically see. The lighting the natural lighting is inadequate. Entry to corridor area are cramped and confusing. It's just very tight in there. It's not warm and inviting. And the interior play space is crowded and unorganized. So what we'd recommend that you consider, again, provide a distinctive entrance with a safe, efficient drop-off, paving layout. I think it deserves an exterior renovation to upgrade to reflect the service you're providing. From what I understand, you've got some excellent people running that daycare. They're doing a really good job. You ought to be given a facility that matches their efforts, or alternately, a new facility might be considered. And I think there might be some benefit to attaching it to your grade school, where you'd share some services, share some janitorial. I mean, they can use some indoor play area, that sort of thing. There might just be some efficiencies there. So, page 2, moving on to the grade school. I do talk about exterior doors there. Sarah's already addressed that. She's already talked about the lighting in the corridors. The library, man, that's a really nice library, really nice. You probably could use some lighting and painting, and I know the windows are a problem there. But and the classrooms in the 1987 edition, really, they're nice classrooms. Some of the finishes are worn. The casework is in variable condition. Some of it's pretty worn, some of it's decent shape. By casework, I mean the cabinets, countertops. It's been there since 1987, so it's done its duty. Restrooms are in good condition, but they're undersized. Not anything acceptable. Sarah talked about that. We did not get into the girls' restroom locker room. We just kind of bypassed that. I guess I didn't go in there, so I don't really have anything to say about that. The special ed classroom, that used to be a science room, and that's what it looks like. It's like special ed, moved into the science room. Probably, you could probably do better. You could probably remodel that into a nicer space for that function. Art room, was really impressed with the art room. It's the same art teacher at the grade schools at the high school. She's very active. I was pretty impressed. Next page, page 3. Still at the grade school, moving into the 1941 original structure. The south and the east classroom. So go to the next slide. So these classrooms here and here, you got really nice white hallways. These classrooms are pretty much underutilized. I feel like this is maybe a teacher's lounge, and then a lot of empty classrooms. So you got a lot of space available, but it's everything's mediocre here. It's just not great. Sorry. Poor appearing, poor condition. Finishes and windows are poor. Very little cabinetry. HVAC is poor. You got window units that all everywhere. Guys, I say this last line. It gives the impression that mediocrity is okay. And I don't think that's what you want to communicate. Clearly, you guys have got some good stuff going on here, but that's what it says when you walk in the room. Moving on to the grade school offices so again, you've got these rooms and this here. So the entrance is unsecured. Really, I mean, you do have a buzz-in system, but you don't.
No, just card swipe.
Just a card swipe.
Yeah.
So you really don't have a protected entry there. And once a person's in the door, they're not forced to check in with the office. It's really not readily identifiable as a main entrance. It feels like it's a little confusing. And the offices are clear away from anything that's going on in the building. So that just seems very inappropriate. And it's disorganized. I mean, when I was walking through there, I had no idea which room was what. And so typically you would have a receptionist. If you ask for somebody, they'll tell you there, or at least you have some signs. It's very clear, it's contained, and it's I don't know. It looks half-baked. Again, it doesn't communicate what you're trying to do. The facilities are not going to make good teachers. They're not going to make good. They're not going to do what you guys have to do to produce a good result. But it's like with anything, good people do better with good tools and in good settings. So this is what I'm trying to communicate. The gym, the space is nice for a PE. ADA accessibility is marginal, like Sarah said. I feel like the usage would be greatly enhanced if you get some better sound attenuation. They were having gym class when we went through there. And anyway, of course, I'm getting older and my ears aren't as good as they used to be, but still pretty rough. It can use a nice refreshing. The equipment's old. And I don't know that those fan control units up there work at all. So it's unheated essentially, and it is a heat only. And then we went downstairs in the locker rooms under the stage, and they're terrible. Just toilet facilities out in the open. It's just nasty. And then you've got, I guess it's tutoring and title on the stage. Is that correct? It's makeshift, poorly ventilated, really kind of inappropriate. We've got a lot of space in the building, and those can be fixed up really nice. So just moving on to my summary for the building, 1987 edition. Generally, the building is in very good condition for its age. HVAC is at end of life, so it needs to be replaced along with ceilings, lighting, paint, floor coverings when that happens. Exterior doors, of course, with windows need replaced. Exterior masonry is in good shape, but it needs to be maintained periodically. You know, I don't know how often you recommend duct pointing, steel. 10, 15 years needs to be. Keep up with this, not a big deal. If you don't keep up with it, it becomes a big deal. We don't really know what the roof condition is. She's already talked about that. Lighting, she talked about that, casework. So, I mean, my opinion was that you need to anticipate a general renovation project the next 3 to 8 years just for going through. Next page, page 4. 1941 structure summary. That building is very sound, looks like. There are isolated areas that need attention, but exterior needs to be maintained. Interior, like I said, generally dated, worn, shoddy. It's really unacceptable to serve next 2 generations. And again, you see that over and over again. That's what we're trying to convey. We want, if we were involved in a project, that would be our goal for these facilities to their life to be extended so that when we're all dead, they're still being well used and in good shape. Plumbing systems are beyond their lifespan. You know, I think we could strategically replace it. That would be reasonably achievable. Electrical systems, same. Windows, roofing. So recommendations to extend the life of that building 50 years. I think we need. I think you need offices and an entry over here. You've already got an entry here. I think this is a natural place to put your offices. Really need an on-grade storm shelter. It could also serve as cafeteria if you want, instead of walking kids across the street, you know, that sort of thing. You could buy a golf cart, put food puts on. So I think back to the offices. Sorry, I kind of skipped over that. You set up a secure entrance. You'd have a defined point of entry. Everybody would come in and out there. Bus drop off, parent drop off, visitors during the day. They'd all come through the offices. You'd have monitored entrance. So you'd have offices. You'd have itinerant services space. So when you have itinerant people coming in, got space for them. It's all kind of there together. Conference room, a staff work and break room, in school suspension, nurses waiting, all that could be all right there together. I think that would be ideal. Storm shelter, the old stage, that could be converted to one large classroom. Put some windows in, that could become a very nice space. Instead of being all cut up like it is now. East building, I mean, all those classrooms, we could really make them nice. We could enlarge the windows, put rooftop units on them, just bring them up to current standards. You have great facility. You know, I talked about the sound attenuation of the gym. Do some nice touches at the 1941 building exterior. Wouldn't be costly, but just kind of make it pop. Again, possibility of moving the preschool to the grade school, and you know, if you know, schools are getting into the daycare business, it seems like more and more. So if that becomes a reality here, that could be part of that. To make a connection from the grade school to the high school, it would be completely. I think you've tried. You looked at that in the past. It's kind of awkward. Almost a lot more efficient just to feed the kids here. That's a thing. So I have emphasized it in bold. That building, 1941 building, is pretty solid, and so I think we could do a lot with it efficiently. Save some funds. Okay, next page, page 5. Moving on to the high school. So the main entry. Of course, that it's not secured. It lacks a check-in layout. The location really is a nice location. Maybe you could do a little bit of aesthetic upgrades there, but it's pretty nice. It might be good to do some off-street parking. I think you do parallel parking there now, but that might help draw a little more attention to that and for your visitor traffic.
Question, when you say main entry east.
Yes, I meant west.
We're talking about the main entry on that,
Right
on
here, right here.
or are we talking about the south entrance?
No, we're talking about the west entrance.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's all right.
Scratch that out.
There's the three double doors underneath the awning.
Yes, that's the one we're talking about. West entry. Righty tighty, lefty loosey, right? Okay. So it's just some thoughts there. The office suite, space in the office seems very tight. We were there, a lot of your kids were at a track meet, and that office was busy and it was tight. And it seems like you could use more space there. So it'd be my observation. So might be a good thing to remodel that, expand it possibly. There's some offices here east, the right direction this time. Here. Sort of underwhelming. The main section, middle classroom. So that is this section of classrooms here. So this used to be one classroom. It's now two. Is that English and math? Is that correct?
Special ed and math.
Special ed and math. And then this pod, and then your FACS area. That's the area I'm talking about. Let's say the middle section. So the divided classrooms at the west, the special ed and the math, look like they're adequate. Restrooms look like they're in good condition, not ADA accessible. The center classrooms, again, make the same comment that Sarah made. Glazed walls to the quarter are a distraction. Replace that with typical wall construction. And some updating of the board. FACS classroom, that's a really nice facility. But you know, a FACS teacher, like, right? I mean, you know, when I was in high school, boys had to take a semester of that. That's just really, it needs updated, but it could easily be converted into two classrooms if you know, you decide to go that direction. But it's beautiful. You know, I looked at the skylights because the Nation building, you have interior hallways like that. The skylights in those two north-south hallways they are a nice feature, but I don't, do they leak? Do they give you problems at all?
No, not since we replaced the roof, because they
Okay.
replaced all that and fixed it. So they were leaking at one point in time, but they are not now.
Good. They serve a nice, it's nice to brighten that up. Looking at the north section, you guys, I forget when you did that project, but it's fairly recent, and everything's really nothing much to say there. Kitchen and cafeteria. Feels like the kitchen is pretty tight, but it seems like it functions well. Cooks didn't have any complaints. Exhaust system is original, so it's probably due for replacement. Your trip top exhaust. I suppose your kitchen equipment ought to be evaluated. As long as it works, I guess. It seemed like maybe they were a little tight on pantry space, and they were complaining about some freezing problems. You've got a walk-in cooler outside. They have to walk outside to get to. It would be really ideal if you could have a walk-in unit that was both a freezer and a refrigerator that they could access without having to go outside. Just was icy and snowy and whatever else. Seemed like the staff said that the cafeteria was a little tight. adequate with height, and it could use an update to the decor. It's just a little sad. That library, it's a really nice library. Maybe it needs a little bit of refreshing, but it's really nice. But our impression was that it's kind of underutilized. I don't know if that's true, that my impression. If it's not utilized well, it could be converted to another use, but I sure hate to lose the look. It's really well designed as far as the aesthetics. We did see the grade schoolers come in and out of there. It's used as a corridor to keep the grade schoolers separate from the high schoolers, which is kind of out of character for that space. So just an observation. Moving on to page 6. The south lobby and restroom. So, yeah. Pull it up a little bit later. There you go. So we're talking. So this is just a bleacher level drawing here. So this is the, again, very focused, is it? This is your south entrance. Nice entrance. Got a nice, cool high thing there. It's pleasant. Is it tight when you get a crowd in there?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It looked like it'd be tight for large events. Restrooms just to the west of the main doors, west and south. Pretty small for big crowds, I'm guessing. And they're not ADA accessible. Moving to the auditorium and stage, that auditorium was really, really nice. And you guys have to be proud of it. It's got great storage to the west. It's got a mezzanine north. Great storage at north. I was doing this late at night. Sorry. The seating is original. You're thinking another 2 generations. I think you probably ought to be looking at replacing it at some point. And probably the curtains. Refresh the finishes. Look at the rigging. All that stuff. Perhaps upgrade your sound and lighting, that sort of thing. Music room, again, I'm very impressed with the music room. It's really impressed with the music facilities at the grade school too. And what's the music teacher's name?
Mrs. Harmon.
Is this her last year?
I hope not.
Okay. She's well, I had a good music teacher, so that's kind of close to my heart. But anyway, you got a really nice facility there for music. We didn't look at the practice rooms. You looked like, I don't know, it seems like practice rooms have gone out of style. It seems like every school that we go to, they just shove junk into them. So I don't know if they could be repurposed for something else. The instrument storage there, just to the east of the music room. It's a really nice space, but I think it maybe could use some instrument storage casework to make it better, more usable. Moving on to the gymnasium. Very nice gym. Great acoustics. It's live, but not too live. Derek shared that the seating and capacity is inadequate for tournaments. He has big plans of changing that mezzanine to seating, and I'm saying that's not realistic. I think that would be acceptable by any code authorities. Did have some roof leaks, looked like, but I'm sure you're getting those addressed. So other than normal maintenance issues, there's really nothing to say about the gymnasium itself, except for that you don't have reasonable gym space for the practices you have. This is typical. All the smaller schools that have one really gym that functions well. It seems like athletic activities have increased since the gyms were originally built. So now you're fighting for time. Getting up for, getting kids on the road too early, getting kids on the road too late, all that. So that may be something that, that you look at for the future. Your weight room seems like it ought to be closer to the gym. And the lockers. Locker rooms below the bleachers. They're inadequate. They're inappropriate based on current usage and standards. As used as a storm shelter, really, the south one doesn't qualify because of windows. So really, you only have the north space. It's below grade. It's not ADA accessible. Flooding is always a concern when you have below grade, and lighting and ventilation. They're just not appropriate. So using them as a locker room, access is limited, spaces inadequate for both junior high school, girls and boys teams. They're dingy. They look like they're difficult to keep nice. The concrete floors, no tile, that sort of thing. Shared showers, not a good situation. Coach's offices, hardly have anything for coach's offices or training rooms. Equipment storage, all your equipment's up there on the mezzanine. So, both facilities are gross. Sarah, I've got all Sarah's pictures. It's just, you guys been in locker rooms lately? Did you use the bathroom while you're there? It's not very inviting, is it? So I think you need to consider improved locker facilities, mezzanine over the auditorium. So again, over the hallway, we're using that as storage, so it's difficult to access. It may be overloaded. I don't know that it's designed for load bearing. Storage loads should be at 100 pounds a square foot, right? I doubt if it's built to that. And Derek says you've had no problems with the fire marshal. Good for you. So you need to consider other storage options. Moving on to the wood shop and the art room, page 7. These spaces are very well utilized, and it seems like they're undersized. I mean, they are chock full. Toilet and wash-up rooms are inadequate. Storage is inadequate. Both areas need more material project storage. I did not observe a centralized dust extraction system. Was I wrong? So
There's a dust in the wood shop.
For all the equipment.
Yes, one.
I only saw it going to one piece of equipment.
No, it goes to everything,
Okay.
but
Does it work?
doesn't work.
Because there's dust there everywhere. So it tells me it probably doesn't work very good. So you've got a very active wood shop and you've got a very active art program. Looks like you need more space. So moving on to the shop, built 1978. Siding is very rusty. I assume the roof is about in the same condition. So it's probably past due for replacement. Doors and windows are worn. They're due for an upgrade. You got central AC. You got windows, air conditioners in there. So I don't know what the story is there. But, you have split systems. So the HVAC should be upgraded if those window units are actually needed. The entrance is just confusing. So you walk in, what used to be a classroom is now the weight room, or else you have to go into the shop. So you really don't have an entry area. Southwest classroom is used the weight room. It's not ideal location. Do those lockers get used?
A little bit, and the kids that were working in the shop will change sometimes.
Okay. It's kind of a weird space. I mean, you got lockers right out in the open there, and I'm sure you have mixed classes. So it's not conducive to changing. There's really no privacy unless you go to the bathroom, which is good. And those are offices, so probably pretty small. That's that southeast classroom. Very well utilized. All kinds of stuff in there. She's very active, it looks like, as a teacher. Doesn't even seem like it's functioning well. Looks like you fully utilized the space. But so the welding booths are clearly identified. But other than that, there's really no, typically we see, you know, an orderly arrangement of things so that you know, hey, this is your metalworking, this is your this is your this, and I couldn't really discern, except for the welding booths, couldn't really discern that there's a real, looks like it needs some improvement there. Exhaust, you have a little bit of exhaust over the welder, but it's general exhaust, it's not specific exhaust. That needs to be changed, and there's no heat, or there is heat in the building, there's those unit heaters. Those probably ought to be replaced with maybe some 2 heaters, radiant heaters, and you need a fresh air exchange system. So moving on to the next page. Our recommendations next 50 years. So looks to me like you need to remodel, expand your office and entry area to add a secure entrance to bring reception closer to the entrance. Right now you walk in the front doors and you kind of have to look around, where do I check in at? So as a stranger, which I walked a few steps north, is okay, but it's not real. Should be you can't get past the guard type of thing. So the reception needs to be closer to the entrance. I think you probably need more space for offices, conference workroom, staff break room, staff toilets. My thought. You need to provide an on-grade storm shelter for the building. Again, interior glazed walls, interior replaced kitchen. We just talked about that. Cafeteria, auditorium, finishes, or existing locker rooms. So the existing locker rooms could become your storage space. Expansion of the auditorium, gym support space. What I mean by that is, I think you need a little bit of expanded lobby, which would involve expanding or moving your entrance, your south entrance some. Add some locker rooms. You probably, add enough locker rooms that would expand your sports programming. You know, appropriate for separation of junior high and high school if that's an issue, for boys and girls. Perhaps add a weight room in that area, and you might consider adding a secondary gym. And I didn't realize that's could be a sensitive topic, but I'm guessing it is. At the art and the wood shop, they need expanded toilet wash-up space. Probably need additional storage. Art room definitely needs more room. Maybe if you separated, the art room took over more of that space, maybe you could move the weight room to that existing wood shop room. Then you move to the VOAG expansion. You could add on there for a wood shop. You could better organize and ventilate your metal shop, and maybe you could create a better entry. Instructors' offices, that, I don't know. So, grandstand, next page, grandstand, concessions, restroom storage, observation, bleachers, very good. Press box, looks adequate. Storage building roof leaks. Restrooms are lovely. They're not good, and concession space is doesn't represent you well. My recommendation there is really remodel or reconstruct the building underneath there for excellent toilets, concession facilities, provide insulated storage space with improved lighting. If you don't insulate that, you're going to get condensation all the time. It's going to rust. You'll have to heat it. You got to insulate it. And then moving on to this building, lastly, really it's in good shape. floor plan is really awkward. Go to that slide. Okay. We walk in the front door. I can walk right into Derek's office. She can't do anything about it. Receptionist saw the guard. Superintendent, so salesman can't just say, hey, Derek. You'd hate that, wouldn't you, Derek?
Oh, it'd be so horrible if they couldn't find me.
And then to get back here, it's, I mean, to find a restroom, like, well, I gotta walk through the storage room, or I gotta walk through this room. Get back here, you gotta walk through a space, through a space, through a space. Now I'm here. It's not a great layout. Now, obviously, it's probably not a high priority, but if you were to do something about it, I think you could gut remodel the whole thing and do really have a nice layout. So, last part of my report here. So my thoughts that I've outlined, they should give you some perspective on my perspective of your facilities. Should give you some ideas on your direction long term. Now, they do represent my opinion, and they need to be weighed along with what Sarah and other disciplines have said, as well as what your patrons think, obviously, and your own thoughts. But so the question then is, what is next? I've given you a wide ranging view, overview of your facilities. Probably a little bit overwhelming. It's okay. We can work in a productive manner to work with you to help narrow your priorities, establish goals, form a plan to move forward. So we're ready to do that. And at that point, I think we would work up budgeting information then as you started saying, okay, can't do this, but these are the things that we got to do. So any questions? I know it's a lot. Any thoughts?
It's nice to have someone from the outside look at it and tell us that we're not crazy. There are things that we need to fix.
It didn't come here to pay compliments. It's going to be real.
You've had some in
Yeah, some nice things. I mean, and honestly, I feel like you've maintained things well, but maintenance isn't the same as
keeping it
current. Be a little depressing because, I mean, you can build something and use it, and 20 years goes by, and it feels like you just built it. But 20 years goes by, it's 20 years old, and it shows. So it's not like we can just do something and then, oh, it's going to be this way for the rest of our lives. I mean, buy a, I don't know what combine costs. Combine costs what, $750,000? How long does it last? It's a little bit like that. The building, now, time frame is a little different, but nothing ever lasts forever. Nothing that lasts forever. And if we don't stay on top of it, the people who follow us are going to have to do what we didn't do. So that's what I'm trying to help you see.
What would your recommendation be for next step?
make those.
I would say, I mean, I feel like I've kind of given you a list here. I think you guys need to talk among yourselves. I mean, obviously, Derek, you're going to have a lot of input here, with all of you. And what's important to you? I mean, clearly you've got infrastructure things that kind of you can't kick that can down the road. Air conditioning, roofs, stuff like that. I mean, that's just, you got to do it. Is that going to absorb all your capability to pay for it? Or do you want to try and tackle some of the optional stuff along with it, and just do a bond issue. It's going to take you 20 years to pay it off. Hopefully you can pay it off in 17, but that means you can't really do a lot until you pay that off. And so you have to be strategic about that. So that would be my answer. It's a little bit roundabout way of saying, you've got to set some priorities here. We'll enter into the discussion as much as you want us to and give you our opinions, but ultimately that has to come from you all. And part of that is, your community, that people are going to probably be a little shocked. I mean, if they saw this, they'd probably be a little shocked. A lot of your patrons don't get past the gymnasium and auditorium. They don't get into the locker rooms. They don't get the other spaces. So, and we talked about that when we interviewed. We can help you communicate that as well. But we would have to, again, it comes back to Sarah, step in here. It comes back to let's set some realistic priorities and maybe reach beyond that a little bit, what we think is realistic, and then push ourselves, because we got to. And then we'll work with you, and it'll take a number of meetings to kind of make it gel. And we'll have budgeting information to help guide those decisions. But at some point we'll arrive at kind of a general sense of where we need to be, or where you think we need to be. And then it'll be time to get the public involved. What I say about that, we talked about a facilities committee of patrons, citizens, so that then we would repeat the tour that we took the other day, and we would show them all the ugly spots, and they would come away with a similar impression. Well, this is now that becomes the group who then communicates that to the rest of your patrons. So it's kind of, and then that leads to a bond issue. That's all part of the process. I mean, that's actually a fun process, just to help people watch their eyes open. You don't have to say a lot when you take them through the locker room. You can stand back and talk.
I think an important thing to note too is you as a board may be the ones to say, we're going to do something, but once you establish that facilities or steering committee, they will be your representative members of your community who will then take that another step and say, okay, I've seen what we are lacking or what we feel we need. You're the ones establishing a need for something, and through these discussions and our help, what you may see as a need, but your community members then that form this committee will take that another step too. They may see something else, and that becomes an extension of your community already that sees another need, and you're able then to answer the patrons when you say, well, did you think about this? We did, and from input from people like yourselves, more patrons in the community, we added this to what we're considering. It starts with you all, but it pretty quickly envelops other people and gets more ideas involved. And that's pretty important, especially when you start talking about a bond issue and people's tax dollars.
I was just going to say, after sitting through a couple of these and being in his shoes, this is meant to be a comprehensive view, and it is kind of a downer. If I were sitting there, I'd be going, oh my. But it's
But
very
the auditorium
comprehensive.
is nice. You can always look at that. But
Both
the
of the music
auditorium-
spaces and the music space.
and the music
gym
space
too.
is
Yeah,
nice.
nice.
Mhm.
I'm just saying, it starts with the big picture, and it just starts trickling down from there. We understand that's going to happen through the process.
Go back, let's go back on page 6 of your notes is amazing. But, nice space, appropriate, everything like that. And you said secondary gym may be desirable. When you talk about secondary need,
So when I talk about,
are you talking about just a facility that holds a gym, not capacity for Because
That-
the
that-
question would be, is the gym currently as it is, the ADA, there's no ADA seating. And inevitably, we always have like one or two people that are stuck in a corner or open a set of doors for them to watch the game through, get into the gym. And I guess, is there any way to, is it feasible? You talk about, well, where I see that line at. Other than normal maintenance, no great need for improvement of this space, but
It does need to have ADA.
I mean, it is a great space to watch a basketball game. It's a great space to watch a volleyball game on one court, but you can't play it on two, so you can't really have a good tournament, or, you know, like, because of the way the bleachers are, obviously, they're cement, they're not, no way you can retract them to make the space even bigger to use. I guess that's my questions on that is the secondary gym become a primary gym? Or that's a big dollar amount, and that would kill.
Yeah, I think that would have to be determined. It could become, I mean, like what we're doing at lacrosse, it is a secondary gym. It does seat what, 300, 250? So it'd be great for a JV game. Two volleyball teams can practice in it. It's got 6 basketball goals, so they can practice. So it's definitely an additional practice gym, even be a JV gym. Don't know that it brings them to the level that they can host state tournaments, I don't think, but.
What would have to happen to make the current setting with ADA seating?
Well, I'm not really prepared. I mean, we could come up with something. With that, you have to sacrifice some other season.
Truthfully, that's what, in my mind, keeps me from applying for post-secondary playoffs. You know, I would love to host a regional volleyball. I know I can do it. But I say this my very first year here, we hosted a regional basketball, and the assistant coach for Lucas Ray was in a wheelchair. I had no idea. No idea until they showed up. We never played them. They had me. I remember that was the day I told Randall, I'll never put postseason. So, I mean, it was embarrassing. I was embarrassed as a tournament host that my very first year here. I was gonna go and I filled the paperwork out, sent to Gary Wilson, and then that city native, he gave us the regional, and all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my gosh.
I mean, we would have to work through that, how we would achieve that goal. That takes some sketching and thinking, and, you know, and it all ties in with whatever else is going on in the project. So can we solve it? I'm confident we could. How do we do that? There's 6 ways to skin a cat, you know. So, but yes, that wouldn't be the first time we worked on something like that. Good question. What I miss besides the ADA exam?
I think that helps start prioritizing things, because if you guys say, hey, this is really important, that starts the process.
You may get voted down.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's there's gonna be a give and take there. Get a committee involved.
What would you guys like the next step to do?
Why are you looking at me?
I thought what we were talking about on the next step was, we already had ideas as far as the entrances, as extra locker rooms and HVAC stuff. Didn't get prices on those. That's what I was expecting. So, I don't know, that's all the help I am.
I don't understand making the entrance secure when the rest of the buildings is sealed. Because if you're gonna do something in the building, you wouldn't come through that, you wouldn't follow the rules.
I mean, so the assumption is that all your entrances are locked. Now, that means there's gonna have to be discipline, so you don't have people putting a rock under the door.
And the most, you got kids out on the playground, which is the most, where somebody could do the most damage. And you're gonna make them come in that one door? I'm just asking a question. And high school has a ton of glass in it.
And you're not out of place. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, as far as kids on the playground coming in the building, your staff are going to use all the entrances. It would be visitors coming in the building that would only be allowed in one spot, which is kind of what we try to do now. But like they talked about, both the buildings, you come in that one spot, there's no one forcing you to stop there. You can keep going. So that's part of the problem with the secure entrance. At that next, the next level, especially at the high school, a good portion of the exterior doors all need to be replaced. So you start replacing them with a more secure door. You start, reducing window sizes and those type of things in the exterior of the building, which I think are all things need to be done, especially the high school building. All the windows need to be replaced. And the floor to ceiling type windows need to be reduced down to more of a standard size window. I mean, the lighting's nice, but it's a security issue. It is a heating and cooling issue. The more window you have, I mean, am I out of space saying that? I mean, yeah, you can buy higher quality glass and those type of things, but a solid wall's better insulation than a window.
We get pretty efficient windows, and maybe you opaque the bottom parts of the windows so you can't see in and shoot in, put special film on the windows to help hold it together, so you gotta work to get through it. There's different things we can do without actually eliminating windows. But, and like you say, your other entrances, but a secure entrance is primarily to control people who, so like the high school, your south entrance is going to be open and maybe some other entrances until the bell rings, and then automatically they should all lock. So if anybody wants to come in after the bell rings, they are forced to come in through one place, and then there's a secondary. So they open the first door, it's open. They come into, I call it a sally port. It's not a sally port, but the second door stops them, so they have to check into the office to be permitted to move on.
And it's not necessarily meant to fully stop the person with the gun, but it does stop, some of the concerns we've had with patrons, parents, and those type of things coming in and going straight to the classroom. Because right now, the elementary, you walk straight in the building, you're not forced into the office or anything to have a conversation. I'm here, and then the phone call's made, hey, so-and-so's here, yeah, sitting down, whatever. So I think that the secure entrance is meant for two different things. Yes, we want to try to protect, but also it helps us secure who is walking down the hallway too, that is maybe meant to be in the building.
Tom, schools have been having that conversation for a lot of years. You don't want a jail, and yet you want to take the steps.
That's just exactly what I was thinking. I mean, you're pretty soon you end up with a jail.
Yeah.
You end up with bars on the window.
But you want, if you can take a few steps to make it more secure, that's the right direction.
And you gotta have somebody there to open that door too, on a consistent basis. I mean, that could be an issue of having the personnel to, do it.
Mhm. At times, it definitely could be. Sid, you basically have said that if we start putting together a prioritized list, you would continue working with us on putting together what a project would actually.
Yeah, so this is just the very first step in law steps. And I would expect, if this process would continue with us, I expect there to be a lot of communication back and forth and maybe you establish a committee or a group of people, just for initial discussions to kind of, to make some initial decisions. And, you know, because obviously everything in here that I'm recommending to one degree or another is desirable. Well, probably can't afford it all. So secondary gym, maybe that doesn't make the cut. Does the shop make the cut? No. What about upgrading the 1947 grade school? Does that make the cut? These are the broad, the big decisions we kind of would need to make first. And I would expect a lot of conversation. I expect to be involved, not that it's my decision, but I expect you would have a lot of questions for us, Sarah and I. And we would be working with you back and forth until we get to that point. And then you would have kind of a preliminary, and then we could do some budgeting based on that and come up with some initial concepts, you know. And because you got to have some sort of concept in order to get some budgeting. At some point, then we'd have to make a decision at what point we go to a committee. And then they may remake some of your decisions. They may come back and say, you know what, secondary gym is really important. Or the shop building is really important. So, you know, so there will be some adjustments to make along the way, and that's okay. But it's really, we can't make decisions for you. You have to make decisions, but we help you, we can give you guidance. And so that's, I would say, you'd have to authorize some people to be the ones making the decisions. However you want to do that. Is that fair? Guess you don't want that all on yourself.
That's the joy of a small school district.
But however you guys would want to do that. Yeah.
So I guess my point of view that I'll share. I don't know that Sid really shared anything with us that we didn't already know. Like what Judy said, I appreciate hearing that from an expert. I appreciate hearing that from an outside source. Confirming that, because that is one concern I had was, what am I missing? Because I didn't want to push for a bond issue and spend however many millions of dollars, and then in the middle of that, we find a bigger issue. So I think that's very important for us to understand in this process. I think from my point of view, the next steps are, current economic state of the world and the cost of things. I don't think we'll ever be in a position where we will have enough money to adequately do the type of projects we're talking about. That Sid and his crew have shared with us, just with our current revenue streams. I don't think that's possible. I think we have too many projects that are too large, that there's not a way for us to adequately pay for that and keep up with what's there, to keep things going. So with that in mind, I think we need to have conversation as you as a board. What do you see as leaders for you, for your constituents? Of what is the priority out of what Sid and his groups presented us as a list? Because one nice thing is I think Sid has helped us narrow down some, because his list is definitely smaller than the multi-page list that I had given to you several months ago. So I mean, that is one nice thing. So we can start there. Is that the list we want to start with? Or do we want to narrow it down even further? Are we all in agreement that what cities present are things that need to definitely be touched and should be touched in a big project? Having that conversation. And then from there, we take that, we get a group of community members together and get their input. That can kind of be your steering committee. They can give us the ideas, and between you guys and that steering committee, here is what we want to present to the public in general. At which point in time, we move forward with, here's a project, we get the design, whether it's Sarah or someone else puts together an actual project with drawings and dollar amounts, and Sid with dollar amounts and a project and those type of things. And then we reassess at that particular point in time, because if that ends up being a $20 million project, I don't think we can afford it. So at that particular point in time, what comes out, or if it's a $3 million project, maybe we can do a couple more things. And we add some things to it. And then we have the final project to take to the public in general. Is that?
Yeah, that's a good description of how the process would work. It's exploring a lot of things, eliminating things, looking at things maybe we didn't anticipate. It's a process. So, I would say timeline, if you were to, let's say you were to start September 1st with, let the summer get over, people go on vacation and all that stuff. So first start earnest on this. I'm thinking at a minimum, this is 6 months. Parts of it could go faster, but I mean, you need to anticipate 5 months. Work through it. It's not a speedy thing. I don't think you want it to be, because that's how you make rash decisions.
Clarifying one point you're talking about, if I understood you right, your thoughts were to shut down a preschool building and move that in.
It's an option.
Where would you move that to? That's what I'm asking, I guess.
It looks to me like there's ground to the east where that playground is. There's ground to the south.
Oh, you're talking about building another building?
Possibly.
I thought you were talking about.
Possibly we take those classrooms on the east end, because they're empty now. If we add an office space on to the south in the middle, we could take all that, and work that into a. And until you start drawing, it's hard to visualize. But there's a lot of direction to go there.
That's where the timeline process comes in, and the prioritized list that further gets narrowed down, and then just getting it back in front of you for your feedback as many times as it takes.
For me, I would like to take this home and read through it and digest it. And I don't know if potentially maybe we could come back to our next board meeting with each one of us having a prioritized list and compare those and see where we're at, and then work forward from there and maybe start thinking. So if we come back to our next board meeting with each of us having a prioritized list of what's in here, and then maybe each of us having a couple of names on a committee. And then at our next board meeting, that could be the two things that maybe we look at and then move forward from there. If that, I don't know if anybody else thinks that's appropriate, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Can I say something about that real quick
Absolutely.
regarding your committee? I think I addressed this in our interview. Make sure the people you choose on the committee are respected in the community, because those are going to be who are going to be talking to the rest of the community. So you don't want somebody on your committee who makes everybody want to vote no.
And what it, like, as far as numbers for that committee, like what is the adequate least and most number of people in that committee for a community our size?
I think 15 to 20 would be ideal. And I would say you'd want a couple board members. You'd want for superintendent and principal. And maybe a teacher from the high school and a teacher from the grade school. And the rest of them need to be not school employees, not associated with the school per se. Because you need, you probably want some mixed demographics. You'd want some farmer ranchers, businessmen, just people who are respected in the community. You don't want rubber stamps, but people who will be thoughtful and who really have the interests of your community. Because in a town like this, it's not, you can't separate your school from your community. So it's really a community thing.
Are there any kind of, I don't know what they call them in school, or the school world, but grants or something to do like the ADA compliance and to do the FEMA, like storm shelter?
The FEMA storm shelter grants, there hasn't been a lot of success recently in getting those passed, or getting any of that funding. They have redirected a lot of that funding towards the fires and flooding, Florida and White. It did have a grant that just went through in March, but it was applied for in August. We had the bids in August, so they had to go back to the contractor that was the successful low bidder and ask for his additional costs to complete the project 8 months later. Board did elect to use that contractor, but it really, when they balanced everything out, I don't know that the FEMA funding really ended up helping them that much. And it only passed because it had been applied for prior to the freezing of that funding based on those fires and floods. So FEMA funding is not really being granted these days like it has been. It was probably 15, 20 years ago. There were FEMA funds out there for storm shelters right now. And ADA grants, I have not heard of any, but I'd be happy to research that and see if we can find it, because there are certainly plenty of opportunities here for that.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I would caution also, some of those grants come with pretty big strings.
Yeah.
That make you go to Davis-Bacon wages and that sort of thing. And so there's.
Particularly on the FEMA funding, we have a peer review in place that occurs with the FEMA funding for our structural, well, for all components of the design drawings, that almost forces about 20% of any funding you would get into the design fees, just because of what we have to produce and send in for peer review for a minimum of 3 peer reviews on our drawings, just to get that FEMA funding. So there's some give and take there. So.
That is one thing that would scare me.
Yeah.
After what Susie and I had to deal with ESSER funds that we discussed here a couple months ago, and finding out all the hoops and all the extra things you have to do, it would concern me, anything federally related, all the extra strings that come attached to that. And I say that knowing that I have said multiple times, FEMA dollars for storm shelter. Why aren't we looking at that? because of things I heard in the past, but now actually having to deal with some of those federal funds, I don't know that it's worth it.
And I will say, neither myself or my structural engineer will ever put out a storm shelter that's not built to the FEMA standard. We just don't always go through the full process of FEMA funding just because of those.
Right.
things.
Well, I agree with Lori that we need to think about this for a bit. Well, not forever, but you know.
Yeah, we can do something.
And I was thinking even like Sid's recommendations are what is it, 4 pages? I was trying to figure it out. 1, 2, 3. It might be 3 pages of stuff that he has on there. And I didn't know if we would need to like just put that in the paper and say, this is what we discussed and these are some recommendations, talk to board members. I don't know if that's useful. Is it useful at this point or no?
I guess I wouldn't, I don't think I would be premature in
Okay.
publicizing. Because now people are gonna hear, oh, we're gonna build a secondary gym. Hey, all right. Or other people are gonna be like, we're against this because you're building a secondary gym. And you haven't made any decisions.
Right.
Because I said secondary gym. So I would say, I would not put it out to the public. You need to go through an internal process. You need to guide these
And do the
decisions.
committee first. And
Do the
then,
committee, do your initial small committee. Once you kind of have an idea of what you would like to see, then you build your patron committee. And once there's a decision, and then we're gonna go through a budgeting process, because like Derek said, well, you are gonna come up with $20 million worth of wants. Well, you can't afford that. So you're gonna start, well, we're gonna unclick that box. You're gonna work to a number that you feel like you can work with. Then, when you decide to go to the bond, that's the information you publish. And when people start asking, how come we're not getting a secondary gym? Well, if you wanna put another $3 million, we can. We don't think the public will support that. So I really don't, I think you wait. And plus, you're educating your opposition. Starting out. You wanna kind of keep your powder dry. And when you do your campaign, which is 60 days before election, your campaign starts, not before then. And so you want the momentum on your side. You don't want to give enough time for the opposition to build an army.
If there's opposition.
We gotta do better than lacrosse, so that's better than 73%, right? We can't give Keely the bragging rights.
They weren't very confident when it all started, but is that okay?
I tell you, it can be it's fun watching a group of people pull together, and then we have a community meeting and have a committee talking to the people that are showing up and coming in, and it kind of became somewhat of a uplifting process where you think it might not be. So.
We'll take this up next meeting then, or
I like Lori's idea. I think that's ideal. If you guys are all in agreement, if you kind of spend some time digesting this before the next regular meeting, and we'll put it on the agenda to spend some time looking at priorities. And if you could bring a couple of community member names, I will work on the staffing names. I'll provide those as far as somebody from the elementary, somebody from the high school. Tom and I probably bring in Jack and Dan also. as far as staff representatives for a group. If you could bring a couple other names, because I know we'll have people say, no, I'm not interested. If you could do that, I think that's a good next step. And we start working through that process.
Any more questions or comments? I move to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you for
Thank you,
coming.
Sarah.
You.
Yes, sir.
Or